today's video, you will discover 8 tricks to expedite and reclaim memory, but before that, I'll narrate a Buddhist story about Jun, an elderly man going through a tough bout of depression, realizing how he's gradually losing his memory. Fearing falling into a state of dementia, he encounters Akiko, who teaches him age-old Buddhist practices. Without further ado, let's begin with the story. The irritating buzz of the alarm abruptly pulled Jun from a peaceful slumber with a hoarse grunt. He reached out to switch off the annoying device, slowly opening his eyes while releasing a deep sigh. Another day. Lately, he felt as though the weight of his 78 years bore down on his shoulders, as if it weren't just days that had passed, but whole centuries. He stared at the faded ceiling for long minutes, trying to gather energy before facing the morning. He knew he had to get up, but his achy body protested with every slight movement. Arthritis had turned him into a frail and burdened elder. A grimace of pain etched onto his aged face as he finally managed to sit up at the edge of the bed. His modest room remained dimly lit, barely illuminated by faint rays of sunlight seeping through the drawn curtains. Jun's gaze wandered over the familiar bare walls and the old, worn-out wooden wardrobe. Nothing had changed since the day before, not even in the 4 years since his beloved wife Miu had passed away. Jun felt the familiar pang in his chest at the thought of his departed companion. Miu had been his anchor and motivation for over 5 decades. Together they raised 2 daughters, now married with families of their own. They shared countless happy moments as well as sorrows, and now, overnight, the future they had envisioned together had vanished as quickly as smoke from a cigarette. Since then, Jun had lived in a state of perpetual stupor and confusion, feeling like a ship without its compass. Miu had been his compass, and without her he felt lost. The apartment that once overflowed with laughter, music, and the fragrant aroma of food now stood empty and silent, like a tomb. Jun was little more than a ghost, wandering among those walls filled with painful memories. Suddenly, a soft meow broke him out of his gloomy thoughts. He looked down to see a pair of bright green eyes impatiently staring back at him. It was Momo, the old mottled cat that Miu had adopted years ago and now provided company to Jun in his widowhood. "Good morning, little friend." Jun greeted Momo with a hoarse voice, stroking the cat's faded head. "It's time for breakfast." With great effort, Jun stood up, feeling every joint creak with movement closely followed by the eager Momo. He shuffled his feet down the short hallway to the dilapidated kitchen, feeling the cold tiles tingling uncomfortably. Jun switched on the light, blinking at the unexpected brightness. The neglected kitchen seemed frozen in time, with half-empty cupboards, an outdated countertop with worn-out tiles, and appliances from another era covered in a thin layer of grease and dust. Miu used to keep this space spotless, but since her departure, Jun barely had the strength for the basics. Resigned, he opened a can of cat food and poured it into Momo's old white dish. The hungry feline sniffed eagerly at the moist pus and began devouring it greedily. Jun watched the animal eat, absent-mindedly wondering what he himself would have for breakfast. He couldn't remember if there were eggs or anything else edible left. Lately, his memory seemed filled with black holes swallowing information. He knew his growing forgetfulness wasn't normal. He feared he was showing the first signs of some form of dementia like his late mother had suffered. The mere thought of ending up as a vegetable, not recognizing his own daughters, filled him with panic. Deep down, he censored his mind, fading slowly like a dwindling candle. But he dared not verbalize his fears, as if naming the illness could summon it closer. Trying to distract himself from such gloomy thoughts, Jun inspected the contents of the cupboard critically. He found a can of tuna, rice crackers, and a package of dry pasta. Resigned, he boiled water to make himself a revitalizing green tea and grabbed a few crackers. There was no point in fussing over elaborate breakfasts when living alone. As he chewed on the frugal meal with little enthusiasm, he absent-mindedly looked out the window, watching Momo basking in the sun after his meal. The cat licked his whiskers leisurely, oblivious to his master's tribulations. Jun observed him, wondering what it would feel like to have that feline carefreeness, living in the moment without regrets or fears of the future. Almost inadvertently, memories of his old life with Miu started flooding back like watching a faded movie. That morning, Jun decided to go for a walk after his usual tea and crackers breakfast. He wanted to stretch his legs and breathe fresh air to clear his mind a bit. He felt as though the walls of his house were closing in on him, exacerbating his feelings of loneliness and isolation. He locked the door and glanced towards the small patio where Momo was peacefully sunbathing. The cat looked at him as if questioning where he was going, but then he settled back down, resting his head on his front paws to resume his nap. Jun managed a sad smile and set off down the sidewalk of the quiet street. His steps were slow and heavy, the pain in his joints forcing him to stop and rest. Every few steps, he cursed his luck internally, wondering how many more years of physical deterioration awaited him before the final end. In his mind, he began to evoke happier memories from his youth. The long walks with Mew, hand in hand, the afternoons playing soccer with his little daughters, the weekend bike rides. It all seemed to have happened in another life. Suddenly, as he turned a corner, he recognized the old square where he used to meet with his youth friends. They would spend long hours there chatting, laughing, and dreaming about their futures. He hadn't been back to that place in decades, not since Mew's death. He had cut off contact even with his old comrades. But nostalgia overwhelmed him, compelling him to sit on one of the benches surrounding the small square. As he watched the branches of the ancient trees swaying gently in the breeze, Jun heard a voice greeting him. "Excuse me, sir, would you mind if I sit here? The other benches are occupied." Jun was slightly startled, so engrossed was he in his thoughts. When he turned to look, he saw standing next to him a friendly-looking Buddhist monk. He estimated the monk to be about his own age, but he radiated a strange vitality and serenity. His shaven head and saffron-colored robe betrayed his religious vocation. "Of course, please sit," Jun replied, gesturing to the space beside him. The monk took a seat, inhaling deeply as if savoring the warm morning. Then he turned to Jun and introduced himself formally. "My name is Akira. I belong to the Z temple located a few blocks from here. You come by this square often? I don't recall seeing you before." "I'm Jun, and it's been many years since I passed through here. I used to meet my friends when I was young, but there aren't many left alive now," Jun replied with a hint of bitterness in his voice. Akira nodded understandingly. He seemed like a man of empathetic and perceptive nature. After a moment of silence, he commented, "It's a beautiful morning for meditation, the cool weather, the bird song. This is what we Buddhists call the eternal now, a perfect moment that is complete in itself." Jun looked at him, not quite understanding what he meant by meditating the eternal now. All of this seemed foreign and distant to him, as if coming from a different world. "For some time now, I've sensed a certain tribulation in your eyes," Akira continued gently. "You seem to carry a great burden within you. If you don't mind my asking, would you like to talk about it?" Sometimes, unburdening ourselves to a stranger can be therapeutic. At first, Jun hesitated to open his heart to this stranger monk, but there was something in Akira's serene gaze that inspired trust and compassion in him. Almost unintentionally, he found himself recounting aspects of his life that he had never shared with anyone before. His wife's death, how alone and disoriented he felt, his memory lapses, and his fear of senile dementia. Akira listened patiently, nodding in understanding. When Jun finished pouring out his troubles, his eyes moist with sadness, the monk placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm truly sorry for your loss, Jun. But don't let the suffering overshadow the joy that you and your wife built together in life. As for your memory, I know certain Buddhist practices that could help you. If you're willing, I can introduce you to them at the temple for guidance." Jun looked puzzled. Buddhist practices to improve memory. It all sounded strange and unfamiliar to him, but deep down he felt curious about this unknown world. Perhaps the time had come to open his mind to new possibilities. That afternoon, when Jun returned to his monotonous home after his walk, he couldn't shake off the invitation from Monk Akira. Did Buddhist practices really exist to help improve memory and mental clarity? He had nothing to lose by trying. After feeding a hungry Momo, Jun searched online for the address of the Zen temple. which was only about 10 blocks from his house. The next morning, following Akira's directions, Jun hesitantly arrived at the entrance of Shomo Temple. The imposing wooden gate was intricately carved with intertwined dragons. Jun gazed at the ancient structure with a mixture of respect and bewilderment. He had no idea what awaited him on the other side. Summoning up his courage, he pushed open the heavy door, which creaked as it swung open. He entered a central courtyard with a stone path leading to an altar covered in incense. Several monks, dressed in orange robes, swept fallen cherry blossoms from the ground. A supernatural peace seemed to hover in the air along with the scent of sandalwood. "Jun, how nice to see you again," Akira greeted him, approaching from one of the adjacent pavilions. He was cleanly shaven, and Jun noticed the absence of his distinctive grey hair. It must have been part of the initiation into this religious order. "Thank you for receiving me," Jun said, bowing slightly. "The pleasure is all mine. Come, I'll introduce you to the others," Akira said, leading him towards the central courtyard. "We're about to begin a group meditation session. It's an excellent way to start familiarizing yourself with the practice." Upon reaching the courtyard, several monks were already seated in lotus position on small cushions. Jun awkwardly imitated them, aware of his stiff knees. Akira sat down beside him and waited for the rest of the disciples to finish arranging themselves in rows in front of the altar. When everyone fell silent, an older monk who acted as the master stood up to speak. "Brothers, let us celebrate this new day by connecting with our inner selves through meditation. We will focus our concentration on our breath, letting go of any worldly distractions to sink into the here and now of pure existence," he said with a deep and intense voice. After those words, he closed his eyes, and the others quickly followed suit. Jun watched everything with curiosity and uncertainty. He had no idea what to do. Akira whispered to him to close his eyes and take several deep breaths to start. Jun did so, feeling quite clumsy in this mystical introspection. He listened to his breath become slower and more rhythmic, along with the occasional songs of nearby birds. But his mind refused to quiet down. He thought of Mu, his daughters, the errands he had pending. Suddenly, the master rang a small bell to conclude the session. Jun opened his eyes and saw that the other monks seemed very serene, as if they were returning from a place of inner stillness. However, he felt restless, frustrated by his inability to achieve that state of mental relaxation. Later, as everyone shared green tea, Akira approached him to inquire about his experience. Jun admitted his difficulties in keeping his mind focused and the discomfort of sitting in the lotus position. "Don't worry, meditation requires a lot of practice. Take it easy," Akira encouraged him. "The important thing is consistency, not missing a single day. You'll see, in a few weeks, you'll notice differences." Though somewhat skeptical, Jun promised to return the next day. He wanted to believe that perhaps this ancient practice could help exercise his mind and memory. It was worth a try before resigning himself to a future of senile dementia. And so, gradually, those visits to the Shomo temple became part of Jun's routine. Amidst the difficulties he faced and his persistent skepticism, at least 3 weeks passed before he began to experience some degree of mental stillness. To his surprise, he also felt less anxious and distressed outside the temple. It was as if the serenity gained in meditation permeated the rest of his activities. One afternoon after the group session, Akira approached him to chat while they drank ceremonial tea. "You seem much more relaxed today, Jun. Do you feel like you're making some progress?" the monk asked. "Yes, I think I'm a bit less agitated inside," Jun acknowledged, sipping his tea before adding, "although I still find it difficult to remember the instructions or the concepts you explain about Buddhism. I fear that my memory will continue to deteriorate." Akira gave him a compassionate look, then, as if carefully weighing his words, commented, "Perhaps it's time for you to start with the most important Buddhist practice for mental clarity." After a pause to add suspense, Akira revealed what that mysterious Buddhist practice to improve mental clarity was. "I'm talking about Vipassana meditation. Vipassana means deep seeing in our language. It's an ancient technique for training the mind and developing a special quality called sati," Akira patiently explained. Sati, Jun repeated, feeling ignorant in that spiritual jargon. Yes, the best translation into Spanish would be mindfulness or mental presence. That's what sati means, Akira explained. Through regular vipassana practice, you'll strengthen your ability to be attentive to the present moment without wandering into the past or future. That will reduce your stress, anxiety, and mental confusion. Jun listened fascinated. Perhaps that was exactly what he needed to regain his mental agility and stop forgetting things. A scattered mind is the ideal breeding ground for all kinds of neurodegenerative diseases, the monk continued. In contrast, a focused, clear and strong mind can delay or even halt age-related cognitive decline. And all those benefits begin by cultivating sati through vipassana. Jun's face lit up with the first glimmer of hope in a long time. He was eager to learn more about this unique meditative practice. Akira sensed his enthusiasm and asked him to accompany him to one of the farthest pavilions of the temple. This is our exclusive hall for vipassana. Here, monks and lay people come to do intensive meditation retreats, some lasting up to 10 days in total silence. But in your case, we'll start with short sessions to familiarize you with the technique. How does that sound? Akira explained. The severe ambience of the pavilion contrasted with the brightness outside. Thick wooden walls, a worn tatami floor, and an ancient altar with smoking incense. Jun felt a mixture of solemnity and apprehension as he took a seat facing Akira, mimicking his upright posture with crossed legs. The monk started a timer and closed his eyes before saying, "All right, begin by observing your breath. You don't need to change it, just follow it attentively from the entry to the exit through your nostrils." Jun focused all his concentration on that simple task, surprised by the difficulty it entailed. An itch on his knee distracted him after a minute and a half. By the time he wanted to remember, he was thinking about the pending gardening work in his yard. He opened his eyes in frustration. "Don't fret, we've all been through the same at the beginning," Akira reassured him. "Your mind is accustomed to wandering aimlessly. We must train it like training a hyperactive puppy. Let's give it another try, this time for 3 minutes." The next round wasn't much better. Jun alternated brief moments of attention with thoughts about Mew or random wanderings. He was starting to get impatient, but Akira insisted on resuming the exercise again and again. Imagine that your mind is like a container clouded by accumulated mud. If you let it settle, the sediment will gradually settle until the water regains its original purity. That's how you should proceed with your mind, giving it time to quiet down, Akira explained. After half an hour of attempts, Jun finally experienced a few seconds of mental stillness, observing only his breath without distractions. It was a fleeting but intense moment, like waking up from a dream. When he opened his eyes, he felt strangely renewed. Akira felt pleased. "You did it, even if just for a brief moment. That shows that your mind still retains plasticity to rethink old habits and create new ones. If you persevere in your daily practice of vipassana, that spark of lucidity will become part of your natural state. It just requires patience and discipline," Akira reassured him. Jun left the temple feeling more hopeful than he had in a long time. He knew that mastering this technique would demand great effort on his part. There were no quick results or shortcuts, but now he glimpsed a clear purpose to focus on in his later years. He would strengthen his weakened mind, like meticulously repairing a cracked piece of porcelain, with Akira as the master craftsman guiding him through the process. In the following days, Jun devoted himself entirely to his regular practice of vipassana, just as Akira had instructed. Every morning, he sat in the lotus position in front of the modest altar in his living room, closed his eyes, and tried to focus every cell of his brain on observing the subtle variations in his breath. At first, he still struggled to control the constant mental chatter that distracted him. Within minutes, thoughts about the past, trivial worries, or future plans swirled like a swarm in his head. When this happened, Jun simply started again from the first step of vipassana, redirecting the wandering threads of his mind toward that single point of concentration, the entry and exit of air through his nostrils. As the weeks went by, he began to notice gradual but significant changes. He no longer had to restart his meditation more than 2 or 3 times in each session. The moments of mental clarity became longer and deeper. It was like clearing a cloudy sky and glimpsing the vast blue firmament behind the opaque layers of clouds. Even outside formal practice throughout the day, he maintained a peripheral awareness of his breath and thoughts. He surprised himself by quickly noticing when his mind began to stray into tedious daydreams. It was like he had developed the muscle of mindfulness. Jun marveled at the changes in his mental clarity. The world seemed sharper and more vibrant. 2 months after that revealing conversation with Akira about Vipassana, Jun felt he was ready to increase the difficulty. He needed greater challenges to continue exercising his regained power of concentration. So, one day after the group meditation session at the Shomo temple, he approached his mentor, smiling. "It's been some time since I started practicing Vipassana as you taught me, and I must say the results have exceeded my expectations. I feel 10 years younger," he exclaimed excitedly. Akira grinned, celebrating his pupil's achievement. "I'm very glad to hear that, Jun. Rapid progress is a sign that you have mental strength and discipline, which are key on our path. Indeed, I was thinking that perhaps it's time to try something deeper. How about a meditation retreat here at the temple?" Jun eagerly accepted the challenge, eager to continue growing in his practice. The monk took a moment to consider his proposal before responding. "Judging by the smile on your face, I sense that you have regained the joy of living through connecting with your spirit. That indicates to me that you are ready for the next step. I invite you to do a weekend retreat, completing 8 hours of daily Vipassana meditation alone." Although the idea of spending so much time motionless in silence might be intimidating, Jun embraced the challenge eagerly. He set out to make the most of this introspective isolation experience, to heal the last gaps in his mental clarity and to focus on enjoying the present. Just 2 days later, he entered the ancient retreat pavilion with his mat and cushion for meditation. Long days of intensive observation of his inner world awaited him, but now he no longer feared the dark corners of his mind. At almost 80 years old, he finally felt he had found peace and purpose on the Buddhist path. That weekend retreat turned out to be a transformative experience for Jun. The exhausting days of meditation in complete silence and isolation took him to mental depths never before reached. After long hours of concentration, observing his breathing, the contours of his physical reality blurred until he was immersed in a vast black void. There was no up or down, cold or heat, body or mind, just pure consciousness floating in the infinite inner universe. In that extraordinary state of stillness, Jun could recognize as mere illusions many ideas that he had previously taken for immutable truths. He realized that his ego was nothing more than a fictitious character, a toshe created by his fearful mind. Behind that veil of ignorance lay something much grander, his true nature of compassion, wisdom, and impersonal peace. Suddenly, a blinding white light exploded in that firmament of dark stillness. Jun saw himself as a child playing in the little gardens of his old neighborhood on the outskirts of Kyoto. He observed his radiant childhood innocence with a nostalgic smile. Then, like in a kaleidoscope, he witnessed scenes from different stages of his eventful existence. He saw himself as a young soldier marching wearily under the relentless sun of war, noticing his proud uniform stained with mud and blood after fierce battles. He also visualized himself tirelessly working in the fields alongside his beloved Mu, ensuring their little daughters never went hungry. He even relived recent scenes of his melancholic widowhood before rediscovering a purpose in Buddhist teachings. That was how Jun could reintegrate with every aspect of his humanity, the sublime, the terrible, and the ordinary. He understood that he was neither better nor worse than anyone else, just another pilgrim traversing the undulating path of existence. Under that new light, the remnants of guilt, shame, and self-pity dissolved forever. The past had been left behind and no longer determined his present. Emerging from that extraordinary state of expanded consciousness, Jun felt like a completely new and rejuvenated man. He had awakened to his true nature as a spark of the infinite universal flow. His mind felt more focused, agile, and creative than ever. He even noticed that the persistent pains in his joints had considerably eased. When Akira came to fetch him at the end of the retreat, he was surprised to see Jun's radiant, full smile, as if his shoulders had been relieved of an invisible burden. Jun exuded such serenity in his demeanor that Akira could only bow in respect. No words were needed to recognize the profound inner transformation of his disciple. "My sincerest congratulations, Jun," said the monk finally. "You have crossed the threshold that few even glimpse. But remember, enlightenment is not a destination but part of the process. You must nourish your spiritual awakening with disciplined practice. Do not lose the habit of daily meditation." Jun nodded solemnly. For the first time, he felt he had found his true home right there among the walls of the old temple. He prostrated himself in gratitude for having been guided to the entrance of the luminous Buddhist path. His last years finally made sense as a renaissance rather than the deterioration he had always feared. That same night, back in the silence of his humble apartment, Jun took a brush and began to trace graceful black strokes on a rice paper. Elaborate Japanese kanji characters took shape under the dim light of the lantern, narrating poetic impressions of his meditative experience. The man who had never written more than monosyllabic memos marveled now at the beauty emerging from his hands. After that revealing meditative retreat, Jun adopted a new ritual for his mornings. After his morning practice, a healthy breakfast, he would take his bamboo staff and walk slowly to the Shomo temple. There, he would spend a few hours sweeping fallen leaves, watering bushes, or assisting in lighter maintenance tasks. He performed these simple tasks with devout mindfulness, turning each step or sweep of the broom into an exercise in mindfulness. The other monks appreciated his solicitous disposition and the peaceful serenity that seemed to emanate from him. But Jun yearned to do more to repay the blessings he had received from Akira and the Buddhist teachings. One day, an idea occurred to him as he meditated under the shade of an old oak tree. That same afternoon, he broached the topic with his mentor during the traditional tea ceremony following the group practices. "After so many months under your wise guidance, I feel it's time to impart to others the wonders that Buddhism has done for my mind, body, and spirit," said Jun enthusiastically. "So, I was thinking of organizing a group to teach meditation to seniors like myself. Many suffer from mental decline and loneliness. This could give new meaning to their lives, just as it did to mine." Akira listened to the proposal as he sipped his jasmine tea. After a moment of reflection, he responded, "I celebrate your willingness to serve others following the Buddha's example. Embarking on the Bodhisattva path signifies your spiritual growth. Therefore, you have my full blessing to use the temple facilities for this purpose on Saturday afternoons. I trust you will sow this seed of transformation in many needy hearts." With visible emotion, Jun prostrated himself to express his gratitude. The mere idea of being able to help other disoriented seniors, just as Akira had helped him, ignited a flame of joy and a sense of transcendence in his chest. So, 3 days later, Jun opened the doors of the modest hall located in the west wing of the temple to welcome the first participants of his brand new meditation group for the elderly. He had spread the initiative among acquaintances, and at the nearby nursing home, the first class welcomed 5 people interested in introspective techniques with genuine concern. Jun recounted part of his story: the frequent forgetfulness, the sense of emptiness after being widowed, and the fear of losing sanity. Then, with fervent enthusiasm, he described how Buddhist practices had renewed his mental clarity and existential sense. Meditation is no magic potion, but it is a powerful tool for self-transformation. It requires effort and perseverance, but I can attest to its extraordinary results, he affirmed, looking at each of his students. After that inspiring talk, Jun guided them in a brief meditation practice focused on breathing. At the end, a septuagenarian named Ao stood up, her eyes moist with emotion. "Jun, my children consider me a senile old woman and have relegated me to a nursing home against my will. I thought nothing could restore my dignity and give me a reason to keep living. But now that I've heard your story and experienced meditation for the first time in a long while, I feel a ray of hope illuminating the darkness. Over the following months, that modest meditation group for seniors grew rapidly through word of mouth. Every Saturday, an increasing number of people flocked to the Shomo temple, eager to learn relaxation techniques, mental connection, and spiritual expansion. Soon, they had to move to a larger hall to accommodate the nearly 30 people who attended weekly. Jun had to enlist Akira and other monks to assist him in coordinating the classes, answering questions, and guiding the practices of all participants. Positive changes began to be noticed quickly in those initially disoriented and depressed seniors. Within just a month of joining the group, most showed improved mood, increased vitality, and reduced chronic ailments. Some had even significantly reduced their sleeping or anxiety medications. But undoubtedly, the most significant progress was in the cognitive area. Many students who initially had serious memory and concentration problems could now remember full names, details of their lives, and even recite long Buddhist sutras. It was as if a mental fog had lifted from their brains, allowing them to regain agility and clarity. One of the most notable achievements was Keiko, a 75-year-old nun with advanced Alzheimer's who could barely utter coherent phrases when she joined the group. But after a year of training her mind with Buddhist practices, she emotionally reconnected with her nephews and even read small Zen poems she wrote herself every morning after her meditation sessions. Another remarkable case was Genjiro, an elderly man suffering from severe depression and suicidal tendencies after his wife's death. But the peace and purpose he found in introspective practices restored his will to live. He went from being an isolated and melancholic old man to a dynamic leader of collective meditations in the park. Thus, that project that had timidly arisen in Jun's mind one spring afternoon, while sweeping dry leaves, had become a vibrant socio-spiritual support movement for dozens of needy seniors. The positive changes generated by that learning space transcended the margins of the Shomo temple. For this reason, after a year of operation, Akira and Jun decided to seek a non-profit institution to support this initiative and replicate it in other Buddhist temples in different cities. They wanted its extraordinary benefits in terms of mental and physical health and social connection to reach as many elderly people as possible. Thus was born the Golden Rebirth Foundation, entirely focused on this innovative model of meditation and emotional support for frail elders. Thanks to several generous private donors and social media dissemination, the program expanded rapidly. Within just a year, 30 new gerontological meditation centers had been inaugurated across Japan. When Jun received a distinction from the Japanese Ministry of Health for his pioneering social contribution, he invited Akira to join him on stage to share that tribute. With tears in their eyes amidst the crowd's ovation, they expressed their deep gratitude for having found significant purpose in old age. As he descended from the stage, surrounded by journalists, Jun headed straight to embrace his eldest daughter, who was waiting for him among the audience with her young children. "Father, Mother would be so proud to see you like this, radiating such clarity, joy, and strength at 78 years old," the woman said with sincere admiration. "You seem younger every day instead of older. This shows that we can all reinvent ourselves and be reborn when we connect with our inner power." With an unshakable smile of peace and tears of joy bathing his wrinkled face, Jun contemplated his descendants, representing the golden future that we all desire to flourish for the new generations. Deep within his being, he knew that this was only the beginning of the great transformation, and so ends this touching story of Jun, the elder who overcame memory loss with discipline and a desire to improve his situation. Next, let's look at the 8 tricks to improve your memory. Trick 1, train yourself. There are various games you can incorporate into your daily life to stimulate your brain and enhance your retention and recall abilities. One of the most effective ones are the famous Sudoku and crossword puzzles from the newspaper. Solving these numerical or deductive challenges forces your mind to focus, analyze possibilities, and actively manipulate information. This brain exercise creates new connections between your cortical synapses. Another interesting option is certain strategy or logic video games or even dancing. Recent research has shown that just 30 minutes daily of these games can slow down age-related cognitive decline. It's ideal to alternate different challenges for greater stimulation. You can also use specialized mobile applications for brain exercises like Lumosity or Cerebrum. These apps have adaptive systems that increase the difficulty of the tests as your results improve, covering various domains like attention, concentration, and processing speed. Finally, a key trick is to learn completely new disciplines, such as studying a different language, playing a musical instrument, or advancing in unfamiliar subjects. Forcing your mind to acquire new skills stimulates neurogenesis and cognitive plasticity, keeping your brain agile and creative like that of a child. Trick 2. Optimize your sleep habits. It's well known that sleep plays a crucial role in memory consolidation and learning. When we are asleep, the hippocampus captures all the data and impressions we perceive during waking hours, indexing them as new memories. If you suffer from chronic insomnia or sleep apnea, you're likely to notice problems retaining information. The same goes if you tend to stay up late watching Netflix series until 3 a.m. Having poor quality nocturnal rest will inevitably affect your memory capacity the next day. To make the most of your sleep hours, it's ideal to go to bed at the same time every day after some relaxing pre-sleep routine. Avoid heavy dinners, nighttime caffeine, or spending too much time in front of stimulating screens. Keep your phone away from your bedside table. You can also complement with techniques like meditation to calm your mind, take a warm bath, read a book on paper, and other activities recommended by sleep experts. If you still have trouble falling asleep, don't hesitate to consult with your doctor. With these simple habits, you'll maximize the efficiency of restful sleep, essential for strengthening long-term memory records. A good night's sleep works wonders for neuronal miracles. Trick 3. Stimulate your concentration. Besides the playful training of your mind or getting enough sleep, another key factor for a privileged memory is attentional focus. This is known in psychology as mindfulness or mindfulness. When we are fully focused on the task at hand in the here and now, an optimal mental state is generated for that information to enter our explicit memory. In contrast, if we multitask in automatic mode, those data are quickly lost. A common example is when we read a text while chatting on WhatsApp and listening to music simultaneously. In the end, we close the book and don't remember anything we read. In contrast, reading in an isolated and silent place allows us to recall that information in detail days or weeks later. To train your mindfulness and focused concentration, you can complement your routine with 10 or 15 minutes of biphasic meditation every day. This simple technique practiced by Buddhist monks involves observing the breath without letting intrusive thoughts capture your attention. At first, you'll be surprised at how difficult it is to keep your mind focused on one thing, but with daily training, you'll gradually gain greater control over your attentional processes, and as an additional benefit, you'll reduce your stress and anxiety. Trick 4. Add physical activity to your routine. Abundant scientific evidence has demonstrated the powerful effects of physical exercise on brain functions like memory. This is largely due to how sport stimulates structural changes in key brain regions like the hippocampus. Researchers at the University of British Columbia conducted a 6-month physical training program with a group of sedentary older adults. After just a few months, significant increases in their performance for learning new information and in tests designed to evaluate different forms of memory were recorded. Other studies have reported similar improvements in both young and previously inactive older adults after adopting a regular gym routine or simply vigorous walks. The interesting thing is that these positive changes persist even months after abandoning the physical training regimen. While additional research is needed to understand the underlying mechanisms, theories point to the increase in neurotrophic factors that benefit neuron connectivity. There has also been seen to be greater volume in grey matter thanks to exercise. So as you know, if you want to help your brain consolidate your memories better, combine your memory training with some movement. Choose a cardiovascular sport you enjoy, like running, swimming, or cycling. Your memory will thank you for years. Trick number 4, take care of your diet and consume antioxidants. Habits that harm your health, like an unbalanced diet, alcohol, cigarettes, and chronic stress, have detrimental effects on proper brain function. But particularly the lack of vitamins and specific nutrients is directly associated with memory deterioration. One of these essential components is antioxidants, which combat inflammation, playing a central role in the pathogenesis of neurodegenerative disorders causing senile dementia and neuron loss. Therefore, consuming a generous amount of antioxidants protects your precious brain tissue. The best dietary sources of these reparative compounds are berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, etc., green tea, almonds, broccoli, and spinach. Citrus fruits and soy are also welcome due to their richness in vitamins C and D, respectively. If you cannot meet the requirement through food, useful supplements of grapeseed extract are available. Similarly, avoid habits that negatively impact cellular health, like fried foods, refined sugar, processed meats, and other processed foods. Keeping cholesterol and body fat levels low is also important. Your memory and intellectual performance will improve significantly by adopting these simple yet powerful nutritional changes. Trick number 5, optimize your hours of mental productivity. Another secret to getting the most out of your ability to process and store information is to focus your peak period of neuronal activity on tasks that demand the most from you. This is known as chronobiology or circadian rhythms. Each mind functions at its highest potential during certain peak hours distributed throughout the day, depending on whether the person is a morning lark or a night owl. Identify when you feel most creative and inspired. For some, it's right after waking up from a good rest, while others reach their peak in the late evening. Your class hours or workday may not coincide with this period of peak brain sharpness, but whenever possible, try to schedule activities like intense study, memorization of key information, and creative professional tasks during that time slot. Leave more automatic tasks for another time. Adjusting work to your biological clock will significantly improve efficiency in utilizing the full power of your brain. It's like plugging into the electrical grid when there's the highest voltage available. Take advantage of your own neuroelectricity. One of the ancient but effective methods for training long-term retention of information is visual mnemonics. It is based on associating what you want to memorize with vivid images and then connecting those mental scenes to facilitate recall. For example, let's say you need to remember a shopping list with the following items: detergent, carrots, yogurt, whole wheat bread, and oats. For each item, imagine a striking scene, like an elephant bathing in a multicolored detergent lake or a giant rabbit eating a colossal carrot. Then, connect these fun images into an imaginary story, like the carrot rabbit visiting the elephant to sell oats, which it carries on a magic carpet made of slices of whole wheat bread. Be as creative and exaggerated as you can. This ensures that the mental figures are well engraved. With repetition, you'll be surprised by the enormous amount of data you can retain in your memory for weeks or even years. It's like sculpting visual statues in the cerebral library. Of course, it takes practice to become truly skilled at devising memorable stories, but it's worth the effort. Trick 8, keep a personal diary or gratitude list. Finally, another simple yet fundamental way to exercise your ability to record information and develop introspection is to write a personal diary where you pour out your experiences, thoughts, and feelings from day to day. Putting everything experienced into writing has a powerful effect on facilitating the consolidation of those episodes into solid, explicit memories. It's the mental equivalent of going from having a bunch of loose printed photos to neatly sticking them in a precious album. But the benefits don't end there, as the mere act of writing down your impressions seems to activate the emotional wiring of your brain. It helps process difficult moments, enhance self-awareness, and even clarify future personal goals that you'll jot down later in that same diary. An interesting variation is to keep a gratitude journal in your paper planner. Every night before bed, jot down 5 positive things that happened to you, or people who helped you and made you feel valued. Cultivating this attitude of gratitude will maximize your well-being, empathy, and emotional security. It's also a remarkable resource against depression, whether in digital format or handwritten with your own handwriting on paper. Creating a continuous record of your most cherished memories and deep introspections is formidable training for your mind. Remember to always carry a small notebook and pen to capture inspirations and important ideas just as they arise. Consider subscribing and liking I'm the Monk Wisdom.